My name is David Carter, and at 62 years old, I never expected my own nephew to circle me like a vulture at my brother's funeral. 3 weeks after we buried Marcus, my younger brother, my best friend, dead at 58 from a heart attack that gave him no warning and gave me no time to say goodbye, I sat in his study holding his favorite coffee mug. The ceramic was chipped at the rim where he dropped it years ago, but he'd kept using it anyway. Character comes from being a little broken, he used to say, laughing at his own philosophy. Everything felt foreign since Marcus died. The house, the silence, even my own reflection looked like a stranger's face. We'd been close our entire lives, built our first treehouse together at 8 and 10, started our first business together at 25 and 23, stood beside each other through marriages, divorces, and every crisis that mattered. The phone rang, shattering the quiet. Trevor's name flashed on the screen, my nephew, Marcus's only son. I answered expecting condolences, maybe shared memories. Instead, I got business. Uncle David, we need to talk about Dad's estate. Specifically, the lake house. No, how are you holding up? No, I've been thinking about Dad today. Just straight to assets. I knew Marcus had left the lake house to me. We'd built it together 20 years ago, spending every weekend for 2 summers hauling lumber and arguing about window placement. Our sweat, our dreams, our brotherhood soaked into every beam. What about it? I asked carefully. Mom and I have been discussing the situation. Trevor's voice carried that restrained impatience I'd heard since he was a teenager demanding car keys. A property like that, you don't need it at your age. You're single, no kids. What are you going to do, rattle around in 4 bedrooms by yourself? The casual cruelty of it hit me like a fist. 3 weeks. Marcus had been in the ground 3 weeks. We've already contacted a realtor, Trevor continued. Market's hot right now. She thinks we could get $680,000, maybe more. That money could really help the family, Mom's medical bills, my kids' college fund. It makes sense, right? Your father left that house to me in his will, I said, keeping my voice flat and factual. Trevor laughed, short, sharp, dismissive. The same laugh Marcus had, but Marcus had never used it like a weapon. Right, I know what the paperwork says. But practically speaking, Uncle David, you're 62 years old and living alone. What do you actually need a 4-bedroom lake house for? Be realistic. I recognized that tone. It was the sound of a man who'd already done the math, already spent the money in his head, already decided I was just an obstacle between him and $680,000 worth of lakefront property. You're worried about me? I asked, though I already knew the answer. I'm worried about what makes sense for everyone. Mom's got medical expenses. My kids need education funds. That house is just sitting there when it could be helping actual living people with actual needs. I hung up without responding. My hands were shaking, not from anger, but from recognition. Marcus's death had done what death always does, it revealed exactly who people really were when there was something to be gained from grief. I set down the chipped coffee mug and walked to Marcus's desk. He'd always said Trevor would show his true colors someday. I defended my nephew, made excuses, believed in the good that had to be buried somewhere under all that entitlement. Marcus had known better. And he'd left me something Trevor didn't know about. Something that would change everything. Before I tell you how my brother predicted his son's greed from beyond the grave, and how I taught my nephew a lesson about family he'll never forget, hit that subscribe button now. Because what I discovered in Marcus's safe changed everything, and you won't believe where this story ends. 2 days after Trevor's call, my phone rang again. This time it was Diane, Marcus's ex-wife. They'd been separated for 5 years but never finalized the divorce, which meant she still had legal standing in his estate. David, I hope you don't think we're being insensitive. Her voice carried that high-pitched concern people use when they're about to ask for something. It's just that Marcus would want us to be practical about his assets. Practical, I repeated. The lake house, the maintenance costs, the property taxes, you can't manage all that alone at your age. Trevor and I have been discussing options. She paused for effect. We'd love to have you closer to family. We could convert our basement into a little apartment for you. You'd have your own space, but we'd be right upstairs if you needed anything. A basement apartment. In the house Trevor bought with money Marcus had loaned him that was never repaid. After the contractor costs for your space, Diane continued smoothly, we'd need to cover Trevor's business expansion. He's got this amazing opportunity, but it requires capital. The lake house sale would be perfect timing. There it was. The lake house money wasn't for my care or anyone's medical bills. It was for Trevor's latest business venture. When was the last time you called me about something other than property? I asked. Silence. Then, we've all been grieving, David. Work's been crazy. I thought about Marcus's daughter Jessica, Trevor's younger sister. She'd moved to North Carolina for nursing school after a massive fight with her mother about control and boundaries. I'd been secretly sending her $600 every month for 2 years to help with tuition and rent. How's Jessica doing in school? I asked. Diane's voice went cold. We don't discuss her. She made her choices when she walked away from this family. I hung up and sat with that statement. Jessica had chosen education and independence over their control, so she'd been erased from family conversations. But I knew the truth. Diane had told Jessica I was barely getting by on my pension and couldn't help with school. She'd kept us separated with lies. Saturday morning arrived with Trevor's black SUV in my driveway. He climbed out with his wife Brenda and a man in an expensive suit who screamed, "Attorney," from 50 feet away. "Uncle David, this is Richard Paulson, our family attorney." Trevor didn't bother with a greeting. Richard extended his hand with a grip that lasted too long. "Mr. Carter, your nephew has expressed concerns about your capacity to manage significant assets at your age." "My capacity," I said flatly. "Living alone, no spouse to provide oversight, managing multiple properties, these are risk factors for elderly individuals." He said it like he was discussing the weather. "We'd hate to pursue legal remedies, but sometimes conservatorship proceedings are necessary to protect vulnerable seniors." The threat hung in the air between us. Sign over the property voluntarily, or they'd try to have me declared incompetent. I walked to the kitchen counter and picked up my phone. Jessica should hear this conversation. "Uncle David, don't," Trevor started, but I was already dialing, putting it on speaker. "Hi, Uncle David." Jessica's voice was warm, genuine. Everything her brother's wasn't. "Sweetheart, I have a question. Have you been receiving my monthly transfers for nursing school?" Confused silence. "What transfers?" "The $600 I've been sending you every month for 2 years. Direct deposit to your account. Mom told me you were barely getting by on your pension." Jessica's voice cracked. "That you couldn't afford to help with school. That I shouldn't burden you by asking." Trevor's face drained of color. Brenda stared at the floor. Richard the attorney suddenly found his briefcase fascinating. "I've been sending it since you started your program," I said gently. "I wanted you to focus on your studies without worrying about money." Jessica started crying, not polite tears, but the raw, ugly sound of someone realizing they've been lied to for years. "Mom said you didn't have anything to spare. She said I had to figure it out myself because family couldn't help." "Your mother lied," I said, looking directly at Diane's attorney who'd arrived with Trevor. "And now everyone in this room knows it." Trevor opened his mouth, then closed it. The conservatorship threat suddenly looked like what it was, elder abuse disguised as concern, attempted by people who'd already proven they'd lie to family for money. "I think," I said calmly, "it's time for everyone to leave my house." They left without another word. Richard gathered his papers quickly, avoiding my eyes. Trevor's wife was already halfway to the car. Only Trevor paused at the door, his face twisted with something between shame and anger. "This isn't over," he said. "Yes," I replied. "It is." After they left, I returned to Marcus's study, the small room in the house he'd lived in alone for the last 5 years. It still smelled like him, coffee, Old Spice, and the lemon oil he used on the wooden desk our grandfather had built. I sat in his chair and pulled open the bottom drawer on the left side, the one that always stuck. Inside were tax returns, old insurance policies, and a worn leather portfolio I'd never seen before. A yellow sticky note was attached to the front in Marcus's handwriting. "Davy, if you're reading this, they've already started. Open it." My hands shook as I opened the portfolio. Inside were bank statements for accounts I didn't recognize, 3 different banks with balances of $15,000, $22,000, and $18,000. All in Marcus's name, but each showed me as sole beneficiary. Notes in his handwriting filled the margins: for Jessica's wedding, for medical emergency, for when you need to disappear. Beneath the statements was a property deed. Smoky Mountains, Tennessee. A cabin purchased 8 years ago, paid in full. The ownership line read, Marcus Carter and David Carter, joint tenants. I'd never signed any paperwork for a Tennessee cabin. Then I remembered, 8 years ago, Marcus had me sign documents he called a business investment opportunity. I'd trusted him, signed without reading carefully. He'd been protecting me even then. Property management letters confirmed the cabin was maintained, utilities current, never rented. Marcus's handwritten note was paperclipped to the deed, our place. Like when we were kids at Grandpa's cabin. They can't touch this. The final item was a letter dated 6 months before his death, written in Marcus's careful script. "Davy, by now Trevor's shown you who he really is. I've watched him become someone I don't recognize, Diane's influence mostly, but his own choices too. He sees inheritance, not memories. Dollar signs, not the place where we taught our kids to fish. I'm leaving you the lake house because we built it together. Our sweat, our dreams. But I'm also leaving you an escape route. The Tennessee cabin, I've been preparing it for 3 years. If they make your life hell, you go there. Jessica knows about it. She'll meet you. Trevor doesn't know. Diane doesn't know. It's yours. Ours. Protected. Sometimes the only way to win is not to play their game. Love, Marcus." Tucked behind the letter was a life insurance policy for $150,000, beneficiary, Jessica Carter. Not through Trevor or Diane, directly to her. Another document showed a trust fund worth $75,000 for Jessica's future children, with me named as trustee. A sealed envelope marked, "For Jessica," sat at the bottom of the portfolio, along with a business card, Sarah Mitchell, property manager, Gatlinburg, Tennessee. Marcus's note beside it, "Sarah's good people. Help me set everything up. She knows the whole story." I sat back in Marcus's chair, overwhelmed. My brother had spent years building a safety net, not just for me, but for Jessica, the granddaughter he knew would need protection from her own parents' greed. He'd seen Trevor's descent into entitlement, watched Diane's manipulation poison his son, and quietly prepared an exit strategy for the people he actually loved. The phone rang. Trevor again. I didn't answer. Let him wonder. Let him calculate and scheme and threaten. Marcus had already won this war from beyond the grave, and Trevor didn't even know the battle had started. I called the Tennessee number. A woman answered on the second ring. Sarah Mitchell. "Ms. Mitchell, my name is David Carter. Marcus Carter was my brother." Silence, then a soft intake of breath. "Oh, David. I'm so sorry for your loss. Marcus talked about you constantly. I've been waiting for your call. He left me a cabin. He left you a home, she corrected gently. Everything's ready. When would you like to come see it? I looked around Marcus's study, thought about Trevor's threats and Diane's schemes, and made my decision. How soon can you meet me there? Before I left for Tennessee, I had one more thing to do. I spent Saturday morning in Marcus's attic, going through boxes he'd saved for 40 years. Trevor's childhood, carefully preserved by a father who'd loved him despite everything. Little League trophies from the team Marcus coached. School awards Marcus had framed. Birthday cards Marcus had kept. Photos of father and son at the lake house, Marcus teaching Trevor to fish, to tie knots, to measure lumber for the deck they'd built together. I found the letter Marcus had written Trevor on his 18th birthday. I remembered watching him write it at the kitchen table, laboring over every word. It was about integrity, about being a man who kept his word, about family meaning more than money. I packed it all into boxes. Labeled each one, Trevor Carter, personal items return. In a separate box for Diane, I included wedding photos from their early years, anniversary gifts Marcus had given her, love letters from when they'd actually loved each other. I labeled it, Diane Carter, Memories of Better Days. The moving company arrived at 6 a.m. Monday. 2 men with a truck, professional and efficient. I gave them Trevor's suburban address and Diane's condo address, paid for signatures on delivery, and asked for photo confirmation. At 7:23 a.m., my phone buzzed with pictures. Trevor's porch, stacked with boxes. Diane's doorstep, box sitting in front of her door. Both delivered. Trevor called at 7:31. What the hell is this? His voice shook with fury. You sent my childhood to my house like garbage? Not garbage, I said calmly. Treasures. Things that belong to you should be at your house. Your father saved those items for 40 years. Maybe looking at them will remind you who he actually was. You're being petty and vindictive. I'm being clear. Your father left me the lake house. The answer is no. It will always be no. I hung up and drove to the bank. I closed the joint account I'd shared with Marcus, the one Trevor had somehow been monitoring. Moved the funds to a new bank Trevor couldn't track. Changed the locks on Marcus's house. Updated my will to leave everything to Jessica. Then I bought a one-way ticket to Knoxville, using money from one of Marcus's secret accounts, the one he'd labeled emergency fund. That evening, I called Jessica. Uncle David? She sounded cautious, still hurt from discovering her mother's lies. Your dad left us something. Are you ready to see it? Silence. Then, what did he leave? A place where we can be family without the people who forgot what that word means. Can you take a few days off school? Yes, she said immediately. Where are we going? Tennessee. Pack for the mountains. I'll send you the address. After we hung up, I looked around Marcus's study one last time. My brother had given me permission to walk away from people who saw me as an asset to liquidate instead of a person to love. Tomorrow, I'd start living the life he'd planned for me. The one where family meant something real. The flight to Knoxville was 90 minutes of thinking about Marcus, how he'd planned this escape for years while I'd been oblivious. How he'd known his own son would turn his grief into a real estate transaction. Sarah Mitchell met me at a diner off Highway 441, a woman in her 50s with kind eyes and a firm handshake. Your brother was a good man, she said. Let's go see what he built for you. The drive up the mountain took 20 minutes on winding roads that climbed through dogwoods and pines. Then the cabin appeared, cedar siding weathered silver, wraparound porch, mountains rising behind it like blue promises. Inside, Marcus's presence was everywhere. Fishing rods mounted above the fireplace. Family photos on the mantel, me and Marcus as boys, our dad teaching us to split wood, the 4 of us at the lake house before everything went wrong. Books I loved lined the shelves. The kitchen was stocked, linens fresh, firewood stacked on the porch. He came once a month, Sarah explained. Refinished that chair himself. Chose every piece of furniture. 3 years ago, he told me it was really for you, that you'd need it someday when his son forgot what family meant. I sat in the chair Marcus had refinished, ran my hands over wood he'd sanded smooth, and felt my brother's love in every detail. How did you know Marcus? I asked. Sarah's expression softened with memory. 10 years ago, I was a single mother working 3 jobs, about to lose my house. Marcus hired me to clean vacation rentals, then helped me start my own property management company. Gave me the capital, taught me the business, never asked for a penny back. He saved my life. She handed me a laptop. He left you something. Video file on the desktop. I opened it. Marcus's face filled the screen, thinner than I remembered, tired but smiling. Davy, if you're watching this, I'm gone and Trevor's being an ass. He laughed, coughed. I built this place for us. For the brothers we used to be. Trevor lost his way. Maybe he'll find it again, but you don't have to wait around being his target practice while he figures it out. Jessica knows about this place. She'll come. You two rebuild what family actually means. I love you, brother. Thanks for being the best part of my life. The video ended. I sat in Marcus's chair in Marcus's cabin watching mountains that Marcus had chosen, and cried for the first time since his funeral. Not sad tears, but grateful ones. My brother had loved me enough to plan my freedom. I turned off my old phone and gave Sarah my new number, one only she and Jessica would have. No Trevor. No Diane. No attorneys. Just mountains and peace and Marcus's final gift. Permission to walk away. Jessica arrived 2 weeks later, driving from North Carolina in an old Honda with a dent in the passenger door. I watched from the porch as she climbed out, looked up at the cabin, and started crying before she even reached me. Dad built this, she whispered when I hugged her. He actually built this for us. I showed her everything. The property documents proving we owned it jointly. The bank accounts with her name as beneficiary. The life insurance policy for $150,000 Trevor had told her was tied up in medical debt. The trust fund for her future children, $75,000 Trevor never mentioned. He said the estate was worthless, Jessica said, her voice shaking. That Dad left nothing but bills and the lake house you wouldn't sell. He made me feel guilty for even asking about inheritance. I handed her the sealed envelope Marcus had left. She opened it with trembling hands. The letter was short, written in Marcus's careful script. Jessica, you chose integrity over comfort. You stood up when it cost you everything. That's who I raised. Your mother chose money over meaning. Your brother learned from her. But you chose differently. Uncle David will give you what I've saved. Use it for your dreams, not their demands. I'm proud of you every day. Love, Dad. Jessica collapsed into Marcus's chair, sobbing. I let her cry, understanding she was grieving not just her father, but the family she'd thought she had. When she could speak, I explained Marcus's 3 conditions for the money: don't tell Trevor or Diane the amounts. Don't rescue them from their own choices. Use it to build a life that honors your own values. I'm transferring to University of Tennessee, she said suddenly. Finishing my nursing degree here. I want to be near you, near where Dad felt at peace. Trevor and Mom can have their schemes. I want this. Within a month, Jessica had an apartment in Gatlinburg, 15 minutes from the cabin. She worked part-time at the local hospital while finishing school, spent weekends with me and Sarah learning to live differently than she'd been taught. Then Trevor discovered where we were. A voicemail on my old phone: you took Jessica from us. You poisoned her against her own family. Dad's cabin was supposed to be sold too. You had no right. We needed that money. You're being selfish. I deleted it without responding. Jessica blocked her mother's calls when Diane tried the same manipulation, claiming Jessica was abandoning her in her medical crisis that somehow never required actual treatment. I can't keep rescuing her from lies, Jessica said. Dad gave us permission to build something better. That's what we're doing. Sarah became the grandmother Jessica never had, teaching her to budget, to fix things, to live without fear of disappointing people who'd never be satisfied anyway. Sunday dinners at the cabin replaced obligatory holiday visits. Chosen family replacing toxic blood ties. 6 months after moving to Tennessee, Jessica finished her degree with honors and got a job at Gatlinburg Memorial. She stayed. Not running from anything, but running toward the life Marcus had wanted for her, one built on her own terms, with people who loved her for who she was, not what she could provide. 6 months after settling in Tennessee, I took Jessica to the mountain lake Marcus had loved, the same spot where our father had taught us to fish 40 years ago, where Marcus had brought her once when she was 12. We arrived at dawn, mist rolling off the water like breath. I showed Jessica how to cast the way Marcus had taught me, the same way our father had taught him. Your dad was the best man I knew, I said, watching her line arc over the water. He loved you more than anything in this world. Why did he stay with Mom so long if he was unhappy? He thought leaving would hurt you and Trevor more than staying. He was wrong about that, but parents often are when they're trying to protect their kids. Jessica caught the first fish, a bass that fought hard before surrendering. She laughed, and the sound was exactly like Marcus's laugh. I saw my brother in her smile, in her kindness, in her choice to build rather than take. Do you think Trevor will ever understand? She asked. I don't know. Some people wake up. Some don't. Your dad gave him every chance. Trevor made his choices. I'd brought something, an envelope Marcus had left with a note. Show him these if he ever wakes up. Inside were photos of Trevor as a boy at this exact spot, Marcus teaching him to cast, both of them smiling. Should I send them to him? Jessica asked. Not yet. When people are ready to change, they find their own way back. Until then, we live well. That's the best response. We fished until noon, not catching much but not needing to. The point wasn't the fish. It was sitting where Marcus had sat, doing what he'd loved, keeping his memory alive through action instead of grief. Your dad's legacy isn't property or money, I told her as we packed up. It's you. Your integrity. Your choice to be different from what you were taught. That's what he wanted most. Jessica smiled, that Marcus smile that would keep my brother alive as long as she lived. Then I better make sure I don't waste it. On the drive back, she was quiet for a long time. Then, thank you for not giving up on me when Mom and Trevor wrote me off. You're not someone people give up on, kid. You're someone people fight for. Your dad knew that. That's why he built all this. That evening, sitting on the cabin porch with Jessica doing homework and Sarah stopping by with fresh tomatoes from her garden, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Not happiness exactly, but peace. The kind that comes from knowing you're exactly where you're supposed to be, with exactly the people who matter. Marcus had given us that. Not through money, though the money helped. Through permission. Permission to walk away from people who saw us as resources, permission to build family from choice instead of obligation, permission to live without apologizing for wanting to be treated with basic respect. 9 months after I left, a letter arrived. Handwritten, 3 pages, Trevor's angular script filling every line. Uncle David, I'm sorry. Not because Mom told me to write this, but because I finally understand what I did. I turned Dad's death into a business transaction. I saw dollar signs instead of the man who taught me everything that mattered. Brenda left me, said I'd become someone she didn't recognize. The business failed. Turns out Dad was right about shortcuts. Can we talk? I showed the letter to Jessica. She read it twice, then looked at me. He's lost everything. Maybe now he's ready to listen. 2 weeks later, I called Trevor. I got your letter. Thank you for calling, he said quietly. I know I don't deserve it. Apologies without changed behavior are just words, Trevor. When you're ready to visit this place to honor what your father built, not to claim it, but to remember it, we'll talk. I'd like that, he said. Whenever you're ready. Meanwhile, Diane tried one last manipulation. She called Jessica from a hospital, claiming a health emergency, begging for money. Jessica called me, shaken. I called the hospital directly. Diane had checked in for a routine procedure fully covered by insurance. This is who she is, I told Jessica. She'll use anything, even fake emergencies, to manipulate you. Jessica blocked her mother's number that day. I can't keep rescuing her from lies. Sarah filled the grandmother role Jessica had never had. Sunday dinners became sacred: David, Jessica, Sarah, and Sarah's daughter Emily. New traditions replacing toxic ones. Sarah taught Jessica to can vegetables, to negotiate with contractors, to trust her own judgment. Family is who shows up with honesty, Sarah said one evening, not who shares your blood. When Jessica graduated nursing school with honors, we attended together. Trevor sent a card with a check. I returned it unopened. Money isn't how you repair relationships, I told Jessica. She got a job at Gatlinburg Memorial and stayed permanently. This is home now. Not where I came from, but where I choose to be. I kept Marcus's lake house, refused every sale offer. Jessica used it for her nursing friends' retreats, a place where chosen family gathered, where people who understood respect could make memories. Trevor's name disappeared from the guest book Marcus had kept. New names filled the pages: Jessica's friends, Sarah's family, people who honored what the place represented. One evening, Jessica asked, "Do you think Dad knew it would turn out like this?" I thought about Marcus's planning, his foresight, his understanding that sometimes love means preparing people to survive without you. I think he hoped. And hoping was enough. 1 year after Marcus's death, Trevor called and asked to visit the cabin. His voice was different, smaller, humbler. I've been in therapy. Working on myself. I don't want money or the lake house. I just want to see where Dad found peace. I discussed it with Jessica. She nodded. Let him come. Let's see if he's actually changed. Trevor arrived alone in an old truck, carrying nothing but a duffel bag. He stood on the porch looking at everything Marcus had built, and broke down completely. I forgot who he was, he said through tears. I forgot who I was. I'm so sorry. We sat on the porch for 3 hours. Real conversation, finally. About the years we'd lost, about how grief had turned him calculating instead of reflective. I thought I was protecting the family, Trevor said. But I was just being greedy and calling it something else. Your dad loved you, I replied. But he couldn't watch you become someone he didn't recognize. That's why he built this, for the people who still remembered what mattered. Can I rebuild this? Us? Time will tell. Show us through actions, not words. Trevor accepted that without argument. I deserve that answer. Thank you for not slamming the door completely. We agreed to monthly phone calls, occasional visits. Trust earned slowly, if at all. You emptied the bucket, I told him. Refilling takes years, not months. I established the Marcus Carter Memorial Nursing Scholarship at Gatlinburg Memorial, $25,000 supporting students from difficult family situations. Jessica helped select recipients. The first was a young woman estranged from abusive parents, trying to build a life on her own terms. Dad would have loved this, Jessica said at the award ceremony. Helping people escape what hurts them. Sitting on the cabin porch now, watching Jessica finish her shift at the hospital before coming for dinner, I understand what Marcus's final gift really was. Not property or money, but permission to stop making myself smaller so others could feel bigger. Permission to say no to people who saw me as something to exploit. Permission to build family from respect instead of obligation. When Marcus died, I thought I was losing my anchor. Instead, he'd been building me a lifeboat for years. His wisdom wasn't in what he left me, but in teaching me it was okay to walk away from people who'd forgotten how to love without taking. Grief clarified everything. Marcus's death revealed who everyone really was. Saying no to Trevor wasn't cruelty, it was clarity. Protecting Jessica wasn't rebellion, it was responsibility. Choosing peace over family obligation wasn't selfish, it was survival. True family respects boundaries. True love doesn't demand you sacrifice yourself. And sometimes the greatest inheritance isn't money, it's the wisdom to walk away from people who see you as something to liquidate instead of someone to love. Thank you for joining me on this journey from grief to clarity. If this story resonated with you, if you've ever had to choose between family obligation and self-preservation, please subscribe to this channel. Every week we share real stories about setting boundaries, protecting what matters, and finding courage to disappoint people who deserve it. Hit that subscribe button. Share this with someone who needs permission to prioritize their own peace. In the comments, tell me, have you ever had to cut ties with family who saw you as a resource instead of a person? What did you learn? Remember, you don't owe your life to people just because you share DNA. Real family earns their place through respect, not manipulation. Marcus knew that. He protected me from beyond the grave. Sometimes the greatest act of love is preparing someone to survive without you, and teaching them it's okay to walk away from people who've forgotten what love actually means.